Hi there. Good evening to you. Eimear Burke here, and welcome to our 11th Fireside Chat, where I am in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, OBODs and Druids. So before I introduce you to my guest, I just want to say hi to a few people. And also, can you indicate to me if the sound is okay? I know from the reminder earlier, there was a bit of feedback, and I'm wondering if it's okay. Just let me know. Hi from Skegness. Hi, Jane from Canada. Stephanie, Linda Steele of Maryland. Welcome. So just give me some feedback. That would be really useful if it's okay. And Elvira from Italy. Great. Chloe from the Netherlands. That's wonderful to see you all. That's great. So sounds good. Sound is good. Great. Listen. Hi, Anya from Cork. Wonderful to see you. Valentina from Glastonbury. Okay. So let me introduce you to this evening's guest. Thanks, Beth, for that. That's great. Let me introduce you to Eva Peeters, who's a member of the Order from Belgium. So welcome, Eva.
Hi, thank you, Eimear.
So I first met you 6 years ago at Carr-Gomm at the OBOD retreat. And I suppose we've been meeting nearly every year ever since, haven't we?
Yes, I think so, yeah. Even this year.
Even this year. Just actually, you had been here with me just a few days before we went into lockdown, just before the whole thing kicked off. So it's lovely to now be in a conversation with you by my fire. So I suppose, what brought you to Druidry? I don't know how long you're in the Order, but what brought you to Druidry?
I think ever since, primary school, high school, you run through all the different spiritual traditions and so on. And I loved going through all of them, Hinduism, all these things. I thought it was very interesting. And then I don't know how I came about, but at one point I read about Druids somewhere. And I started looking for books in the library, and I read a book by Philip. I always forget which one it is because it was in Dutch. And I think I was about 17, 16, 17, 18. I can't remember really. Okay. I was really taken by it. And I think it's just the word Druidry was something that really set me off. It's just, you know how you sometimes read a word and have the feeling, yes, this is it. It was in the time of, well, there was internet, but very basic internet. So I think at the back of the book, there was something like, write us if you want to enroll in this course. And I did. You could write and get the first 2 lessons, the first 2 courses for free, or not for free, I can't remember, but it was introductory. And I did that, and I really wanted to do the whole course, but my mum said maybe you should try one lesson after the other, and I gave up on that point. I think at that point maybe I was just too young or something, but that's the first encounter I had, yeah. And I didn't. Sorry,
you said 16 or 17. That's quite young. So, and when did you come back then to Druidry?
I think it was a year before we met, something like that. 2013 or something. I think the years between, so I was quite, I grew up with, my mother is very into Bach flowers and spirituality, very broad sense. So it was very common to me, but during university years and I don't know, the years after, it was a bit of more of a mental, it gets tighter or something, or more rational, I don't know.
Yes.
So it was really at the back of my mind. I still had this, sort of a longing but it was always something that said, but can't be really true or can't be real or, and then at one point I met up with a friend regularly, someone living in Belgium, but who was Swiss. And she was talking about the conference in Switzerland. That was really inspiring. We were both working on sustainability, and she went to this conference on sustainability, but she said there was a lot of these other things as well, yoga, but then she sort of went into spiritual things. And I remember sitting there and telling her, oh God, yeah, I know I really have to at some point get back into this, but I don't really want to. I felt some sort of reluctance, or it's always, I always joke that I sort of see, it's a cliche. I connected spirituality to women in what do you call it again? The these robes, but very, I don't know the word, but orange robes that are very wide and so on, and African dancing and all that sort of things that I grew up with in the 80s. And so I had a lot of resistance towards that. But then talking to her reminded me that I might want to get back into that. And then Drudry came up, so I remembered the course, and I thought, that's it. I don't feel so much resistance towards that. And well, afterwards, it was just a door that just had to be pushed a little bit, and then it was wide open again.
And then you came to Carr-Gomm.
Yes.
So just for people, because I know a number, because I've chatted to Pat and Peter and Marcus. Well, I knew Marcus before, but that's where I met Pat and Peter for the first time. Just for you, just to describe for people what that meant to you, Carr-Gomm.
Oh, it's difficult to put into words. And the longer, the further back it is, the more legendary it becomes.
In the way of a good story. So,
I think I had my children quite small still at that point, and how you're so immersed in being a mother and taking care of all of that, and because we don't live very close to our parents, both my partner and me, we never had really a lot of time apart from the children, even him and me together. So I think that was one of the first times that I sort of escaped. I found it extremely exciting. I just saw the flyer and I thought, oh, I want to do this, but do I really want to do this? Oh my God, no. To Wales, how am I going to do that? I don't fly. So all of that was very, very challenging at that point. Yeah, but I did it anyway. So I took the train forever. It seemed forever. It's not so long really, but it seemed forever. Lots of switches and stress and taxi and so on. So that was really an expedition in itself. And then arriving there felt like it was for the first time again since, I don't know, being a teenager or being pre-relationship, pre-children. It felt again as if I was on my own. I wasn't determined. I wasn't, my identity was not, I'm doing this as a job. I'm having children. I have a partner. I live there. Nobody was asking about that. So that was really, I find it really interesting what happens when you don't ask people's age or about their jobs, and suddenly everybody's just equal. I remember, at the end of the retreat, talking to somebody who was sleeping in the little cottage that we were sleeping in, and she was saying, "Oh, my grandchild," and I said, "What? You have a grandchild?" I thought she was, I don't know, 5 years older than me. I had no idea. Everything falls away. And that was just so, I don't know, I was so mind-blowing, really, to see what happens when you drop all that identity and it's just you being there. So for me, it felt like just being myself, and how liberating that was. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful to have that freedom. We don't always get it, but I think that was a very, very special place where that allowed that. And that all the other extraneous roles were not important. It's just who you are, what you bring. And then how that continues to develop each time we meet. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And obviously, also Wales, going to Wales is such a special place. I studied English at university and Scandinavian languages, but I hadn't been doing anything with English since for years. So I'd adopted this European English accent. I thought I lost everything I knew about English, and it just came back. And being there was so. I remember walking around in the woods there and thinking, "Oh, this is what I've always when I thought of gnomes and elves, and as a child, that was exactly nature, the surroundings that you'd somehow imagined, and it was just there. So such a special place. Yeah.
Just describe the landscape, what it meant to you where we were, because in Carr-Gomm I was overlooking over Lake Padarn in Snowdonia. So just
it's this, well, for people living in England, I know this is quite obvious, but it's the stones that are covered in moss and the oaks, all the oaks that are small and curly. It's just nature feels very, very soothing in a way, and very safe, like a nest, really. The mountains, I have a very, very soft spot for Dinas Emrys, the place that we visited twice. I've been there again afterwards. I went with my family, went to Wales, and it's just such a magical place. It's like as if you step some, it's the funny thing is we take a long route there and you feel like you're somewhere deep in the countryside, and then when you take the road, it's actually just up there. You're just driving next to it, but because we're taking such a long route around it, you reach it by the other side, and it feels like you've disappeared into some other realm or something. Yeah,
it's part of the magic of the place, isn't it?
yes,
That sense of pilgrimage to visit rather than the direct route. Yeah. So you're in Belgium. Are you a member of a grove or a seed group? Or are you a solitary druid?
Solitary, I think. I've started a course though, a course in an extra druidry course now this year. We were about to start in this last lockdown. We only did Zoom to start the course, but I felt it already started, and we're going to do the first 3 days in January. So that's the only thing up since I've been in the order for 6 years now, or 7, and it's the only thing close to starting a grove or something that I've been to. So up till now, I've been just on my own. Yeah.
So this course will be in Belgium.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You mentioned a few times since I've known you the Ardennes. So obviously, I think that's a place that resonates with you. Am I right?
Yes. Well,
so talk a little bit about that.
It's not that because I've been to the Ardennes before that I was into, before I joined the order again. And it's not that I, at that point, felt a very strong pull towards the place. It's just it's an area that we go to in Belgium when you want to go on a weekend and for some hiking, things like that. But for me, I really feel at home in the British Isles, and that's for me a place that I really, really feel very well. And also, you still, I know you probably don't think so, but you still have a lot of open space and places where you can get lost in. We don't have that over here. It's really very hard. We do have, there's a few nature reserves where you can get lost, really lost, but it's not very common. I live in a city. It's a small city, but everything in Flanders, at least, is just built, fully built. So for me, it was the challenge every time coming back from the retreats and sort of mourning the fact that I didn't have any nature close by. So it was a way of looking for how can I escape to nature. I grew up in an area with lots of woods, and I don't have any woods over here, not really proper woods. So going to the Ardennes is really doing that, finding the woods. And it's actually a brilliant place. It's very diverse. It's really beautiful if you know where to look. So yeah, I love going there now. I go once a month. I take the train. I go on a one-day adventure. I take the train for 2.5 hours, go on a hike for 6 or 7 hours, and then take the train back. Yeah.
That is a hike. That is an adventure.
Yes, it is.
5 hours on the train for
I know.
8-hour hike. That's my hat off to you. That's more impressive.
It was an idea that I had for a long time, and I never did. It's how you at certain points you think, oh, this is very silly idea, and then years after you seem to be doing it regularly. That's how it went with the one-day adventures. At first I thought it's ridiculous to take the train for 5 hours, And now I think, thank God, in 5 hours, I've had a day out. I've had a holiday, really, been away, really, truly, really in the woods and feeling away from everything. And taking the train is not so bad. It's not very expensive in Belgium either. It's different, different from up there with you.
It's so expensive here. But isn't it lovely to be able to say, okay, this is worth it? That
yes.
Whatever investment of time, effort, etc., that you put into it, and then you know that you're going to have this wonderful day of hiking in the mountains and challenging yourself physically, but also being in nature within the woodland, and it sounds magical.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's very empowering. I often have a slight meltdown the evening before because I know I've got to go again tomorrow, pack everything and so on. So it's always a bit of a challenge, and getting up early and. Sometimes trains mess up, and I've been on a train for 7 hours, 7 hours of hiking, 7 hours of train, because there was some accident somewhere. So you never know. But yeah, being on a train can be really wonderful if you've got a good book.
That's true, absolutely. You mentioned, the other landscapes. Where would you say your favorite landscape is? You mentioned the UK, so. It doesn't have to be, but where, I know you've been to Ireland as well, but where would be your favorite?
It changes. I think it's, every time I say something and I go somewhere else in England, I mean, if I go to Wales, I say Wales, but I also like England. I like the bridleways, the hills that go up and down. So the sort of greenness that I can only find there, and the oaks that are just big oaks in the middle of a field. So, but if I'd have to choose, then at this point I'd still go for Scotland, the West Highlands, Torridon, that region. I went with my family for a summer holiday, and we drove around a lot, but there was this one part. It's quite a large part, Applecross. I can't remember all the names by heart, but that region, just a little bit north of Skye, on the main land, and it's just stunning. It just feels so free, and there's something about the Scottish hills. I know it's a good idea to plant new woods there, and it used to be a lot more woodland, but the hills that don't have woods. It's something about when they're green, it's so inviting. It feels like it's a bed lying there and waiting for you to, you can't, it's too big, but it just feels for me very, very soothing and inviting. Yeah, I remember coming back, and the first week, every morning I woke up, I had this immense feeling of, I can't explain. It's very of a wide vastness, and then it sort of closes in again because you're living in a lot. I can really feel the difference of a dense country like we're living in, and then that openness of the Scottish Highlands. Yeah,
absolutely beautiful. Somebody, I just want to. This just from Ellie. I just put this up. My memories of Eva are always in her boots, way, way, way ahead of me. Absolutely. My thing is almost like you walk from Belgium, that you don't take public transport, that you actually just walk, and you're well able to do that.
I'm actually really lazy. I hate walking. I've hated walking for a very long time. So if I can take my bike, I will always take my bike because walking is too slow. So I don't know. Yeah, it's probably your image of me, but it's not entirely correct.
Because I have the image of you in the shorts as well. There's a question from Jane. Have you followed the family tradition of working with flower and plant remedies?
I haven't. No, not yet. I'm still forever in Bardic grade, so I'm expecting this to open up. I'm very into flowers, really, and I'm really interested in herbs and medicinal herbs and so on. But there's something with if your parent has a specialism, I don't know what we say, speciality, no, when they're specialized in something, it sort of takes away the fun of your own discovery. So I've always steered a bit away. Yeah, I know this, I've realized this it's from my own experience, but I know I have to be quiet to my girls because I can be very full on about everything. And then the oldest one especially is like, oh, not interested. So it's a bit, you want your own discovery. And when somebody's, my mother was studying very hard for the Bach flower remedies to know everything. And it was so present that, I don't know, I didn't feel the inclination to follow that. No, not yet.
I know I found that with my own children, because they were young when I joined the order, and when they were very young, they would accompany me for ceremonies and things. And then it was like, none of that. And the difficulty is if you're too enthusiastic, it can be off-putting. And I know Howard used to say that children have to break the mold. They have to do something that's different. And hopefully, if it's right for them, they come back to it. They may or may not, because everybody has their own path. So so okay. So you're still in the Bardic. What? How does it? That was. Oh God, no. I want to ask you a question about the Bardic grade. It took me 7 years to finish mine. So
I know. I'm holding on to that.
Oh, absolutely. It took me such a long time, but and it was fine, and it was the right length of time. And there are others who take longer or shorter, and everyone's time is right. What within the Bardic grade that you've done so far has supported you? Or is there a particular practice or something about it?
Difficult question. I think I'm really hungry for a lot of knowledge and in-depth knowledge, mysticism, all of that. So everything that has nourished me in that search for knowing more, I think that's one of the important things, or that's one of the things that I cherish. One of the things that are good and necessary is to get me doing stuff, experience stuff. So I'd always keep my head in the books if I were to choose. But doing the ceremonies on your own and taking time to do that, and I think that's very important. Also, what I really like about the Bardic grade is the Taliesin, how the story is, how I remember the first time, it's very early on in the Bardic grade. The first time I read it, I thought, oh my God, I don't see it. I don't see anything in it. I don't see there's a plot. It feels, it's like a river. It just flows. It doesn't start. It doesn't end. To me, that's how it felt. It felt like it wasn't finished or something, or there wasn't, didn't have enough, body. But
Yes.
then, every time picking up that story again and bringing to light a different aspect of it, the richness of it, that really blew me away. Yeah, it's a good lesson for being too cocky.
But I think there's the telling and the retelling and the retelling and the retelling and so on, and the layers and layers that reveal themselves with each telling, that you won't get that with the first one or the first time. And I think it's the magic of stories. And a number of people who've mentioned, finished their Bardic grade and maybe went on to the Druga and then went back and revisited the Bardic grade. And it was like a different experience, that, it never ends. And it's just that wonderful, the new discoveries you make by going back to revisit something. Because you're a different person by the time you go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a new experience.
And there's so much in it. There's so much wisdom in it. And I don't think you can grasp it just by, going through it once and then never looking back at it. I think you can forever glance back, open something and see, that helped me today. Also, for me, I know I'm taking a long time doing it. And part of that is because I want to do things really well, and I read the booklet or the verse, and then I think that was too easy. I really have to spend thorough time going through it. It can't, otherwise I won't have done my lesson very well. So that's part of why it takes me so long. And the other thing is that when I had it, especially in the first half of the Bardic grade, it was just at the time when I opened one and it talked about something that was actually exactly the thing that I was dealing with at that point. So it felt like it had its own timing, and it was absolutely perfect. So yeah, I'm not regretting, or I'm not, telling myself off for taking such a long time. It's just a bit funny, but yeah,
Oh,
I
and
think
so,
it's okay.
do you have a daily practice?
Not specifically Druidic practice, no. I meditate in the morning. I sit outside
Okay.
in the rain sometimes, very often in Belgium. And yeah, it's trying to empty my head, trying to draw up energy from below, trying to draw down energy from above, saying a sort of prayer of giving thanks, something like that. Yeah, and that's for
Sounds
now.
good.
So I've also been, it just grows. I think I've had a time where I did yoga every morning instead of meditating.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what I'm into that point and what is helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So, has there been a time when Druidry has in your life, that Druidry has actually supported you?
Has there been a time where it supported me?
Where you say, because of my Druidry, I managed this, or I really felt held.
I can't really. It's something that is constantly with me, I think. So I can't really pinpoint. It's not that I've had a lot of traumatic experiences or anything. It's just, on your regular path of growth and things that you encounter, challenges, times where you really feel very low and so on. So I think for me, the connection to nature is a constant, and by reading more or doing, taking part in Druidry, or I don't know how to say it, experience Druidry or live it really. It just gives it an extra dimension to me, I think. So makes it richer, or it's easier to connect to nature because of that layer. Whereas before I would just walk in the woods, enjoy that, but now I can sort of relate even better or connect even better, I think. It's difficult to put into words. I don't know whether I could answer maybe something else another day.
No, I think that's lovely, because I know for me it was that the course we did provided a framework from which to live, and now I've integrated. It's there all the time. And you mentioned, is Druidry something you do or something you are?
For me, it's absolutely what I am,
Yeah.
and not something that I do. I wouldn't know how to, because people sometimes ask, so what you do as a druid?
How
I
do you
don't
answer?
really know. I smile and I say, I don't want to go into it. No, really, it's more about just how you feel, I think, or a way of looking at things, a way of connecting, shared symbols, shared experiences. I don't know, shared way of looking at things, looking at nature, looking at art, poetry or expression, maybe creating stuff. I think when you meet somebody else who is into Druidry, it's very, very easy to relate, because there's a shared way of looking at things. Yeah. But it's difficult to explain. I can't really put it into words very well.
Have you developed your own creativity?
Thanks to Druidry, you mean?
Yeah.
In some ways, probably yes. I think the writing writing and poetry, it's always been there. But it might have been tickled a bit more because of how the Bardic grade invites you to tell stories. I'm still not a storyteller, but I definitely manage to tell stories about my life, about things a lot better now. It's just a way of standing still with things. And I used to read and listen to everybody else's stories and think, oh my God, they have such an interesting life. I'm so boring. And now I just realize it's about you telling the story of your own life and molding it into a story. And molding it into a story means that you're standing still with what happened and giving meaning to that. So yeah, I think that's something that Rotary helped me with.
I love that expression. You're telling your story, and that helps you stand still. I think that's a beautiful image, because it's about being, I suppose, still within that center of your being, and being, through telling your story, you become who you are. I think that's beautiful. I think that's really creative.
It also made me realize that there's different stories that you can tell about yourself, and often, or at least for me, I've been telling a story about myself for a long time, and I could hear myself. There was this, I had to do an exercise for something. You had to write your own, a short biography about yourself, but just really a true, a live biography. And I started writing, and at a certain point I thought, oh my God, such a sad life. What a sad story you tell about yourself. And then I thought, the interesting exercise would be to look back to the whole part and look at, and what are all the good things that happened there, and lift them out, because there's equally a story to tell that is very happy, very beautiful. Only you have to tell it to yourself. If you don't, you just keep repeating all that, everything that went wrong, or everything that happened to you and you didn't have any control over, and so on. So yeah, the storytelling is a big thing. It's something that really still occupies my mind a lot. Yeah.
I think I like that, taking out also the joys, the gold nuggets from your life story. I think is a very, very important for us to recognize, because that is part of who we are. I think it's sometimes can be very easy to focus on the pain or the so-called negativities, stuff that we've internalized about ourselves, but to be able to acknowledge those wonderful joys and to pick them out, because that's what I suppose sustains us going forward.
And also when you listen to other people's stories and think, oh, look how well they've done, look how they must have had an easy life. It just it builds up, and see what it got them, and it probably was easy for them, easier than it was for me. But it's just, that's often, if you listen to them, it's often because they are telling a story of success, and not the story of all the grief and all the pain. And it's not, I don't want to put all these experiences aside. It's just, for me at least, at some point, it's time to say goodbye to a few of those stories and knit new ones.
Absolutely. And I think we have our story, but we are the creators of our story going forward, and we can change the script, even if there might have been a point where we thought it was predestined how we continue. We can always change that. And I think Druidry allows us that to, because there's so much of within the Gwers around allowing you to reflect on something or a question. So when you're doing the Gwers, even like aspects of the Taliesin story about either the characters or what's happening to them, that allows you all the time to reflect on it. If it's right now and if it isn't, there's lots of freedom. I think is magical. JJ says, perhaps share your wonderful story of the Isle of the Cailleach.
JJ. Well, I don't know. It's a long story, so there's many things to be told. But we were invited. JJ was there as well. We were invited by a common friend from Peter, who was on the Fireside Chats as well, for a Samhain on Inch Cailleach, which is an island, small island in Loch Lomond, the island of the Cailleach, and it's a bit of a nature reserve, so you cannot really. You can take a boat there, a ferry, just a few minutes, and then you can spend the day there. And you could also spend the night, but you'd have to wild camp, and you'd have to ask for permission as well. So Peter did that for a small group of us. And yeah, it's a very, very special island. It's really recommended if you ever visit. It was a very special time. It was very intense. Yeah, and the sleeping out, it was the first time I think I slept outside. It was end of October, so in Scotland. So, but the weather was fine, and it's absolutely, the island is absolutely stunning. It's really, really beautiful, and there's lots of Peter has the knowledge about that. So there's lots of stories about the island, about why it's called the island of the Cailleach. Very interesting. So yeah, maybe I know he has a text about that, so maybe he at some point wants to share that, all his findings about Loch Lomond and the island.
Now, I know you're. Are you an activist?
Can you define what an activist
Your
is?
person doesn't fly, and that always impressed me. This is why I say I have the picture of you in the shorts and the hiking boots that you walked all the way from Ghent to where you've come. And it seems to be locked in my mind. I know it's not quite true, but my sense of you is that you are, and maybe I'm wrong.
I'm really principled. I think when I'm in sixth grade in primary school, I had to write an essay at that age, which is very short. And I remember my teacher saying, you should become a philosopher or a psychologist. I didn't become any of them. But I think the title was something about saving the world. I don't know. I can't remember really dealing with that stuff at that point. The only thing I remember of that age is being very indignant about how what a mess it was made. You know, how it must be really easy it cannot be so difficult to solve all these problems. So that feeling of powerlessness a bit. But it's not. I wasn't really an activist in high school or after that. I don't do them or hardly do any demonstrations or stuff like that. So I'm not really an activist in the sense of trying to push a lot of people around into a direction, and or maybe not an activist in the sense of being angry. That's probably the better way to describe it. I'm not constantly angry and shouting, this is not right. And I'm not saying, I'm really glad some people do, because I think we have to constantly be critical about what happens around us. It's just not, I'm not very, it's not the way or the person that I am. It's not an emotion or not a state that I thrive in. So in that sense, I'm not an activist, but I'm an activist in my personal life. So I try to change things by living it. I think that's how I think I can change things in the world around me, by trying to live as it's not authentic or truly, but in balance with the planet in some way, but in balance with everything. So it's a sort of trying to live in a balance, and then being happy about doing that and radiating the happiness about it, and that way hopefully inspiring people. So that's, in my personal life, and I've sort of prolonged that into work. So a part of my work is actually trying to convince people to to work more sustainably. But I always try to do that through inspiring them rather than argument, using arguments and convincing them.
because it's interesting, because when I wasn't thinking of an angry shouter when I asked you the question as an activist, I was in conversation with Owen the Vardoon last week, and he's an activist for travellers in Ireland, and he described activism. I'm going to look at that in a minute, but because things are moving up and I want to be able to catch it. He said that, you know, somebody who puts out window boxes with flowers or herbs on them is an activist. That it's somehow you are living your life from a place of principle or a value. For example, the planet or whatever it is, organic food or whatever it is, and a lot of it is around. It's about your actions, how you live your life, rather than how you shout about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, both have values. And so this is a perfect plug for the Craft-Vist Collective. Activism needs introverts. Do you know what the Craft-Vist Collective is?
No, not the Craft-Vist Collective. I'm going to Google it afterwards.
Okay, yeah. But that activism needs introverts. And I think there's that being able to, you've no idea how you influence in that quiet way that you make people think by the actions that you do. And I know in your work, you work in just describe your work.
Well, it's only part of, I'm a freelancer, so I do many things, projects, things that come to me that I just feel like doing, often not earning money, but just, you know, for me, it's about experiencing things and trying to create things that make you feel good or that you feel strong about, and not so much about focusing on doing a job, earning money. But of course, we all have to live, so I do earn money. Thankfully, really grateful for the money that I get, just putting it out there. But so part of what I do is I coordinate together with another colleague. We coordinate a network of cultural organizations in Ghent, 56 at this point, organizations who want to work more sustainably. So it's arts and other cultural organizations that share a mission of contributing in some way to becoming more sustainable, to contribute to sustainable society. And we run the network, but it's a very, you know, not many days a week, but it takes up a lot of headspace for me. So it's something that I feel strongly about, and it's because of that, doing that job. I've been doing similar jobs for a long time, and it's a constant balance of wanting to change something in the world around you, and still respecting the freedom of will. Is that right? Freedom of will? Yeah. So if I say inspiring, so trying to change something in your own life and then trying to inspire other people by that, I think it's just because of experience. I think that's the most effective way, because I have tried, I have tried really pushing people and writing texts that play on their guilt and so on. So I've tried a lot of things, and it's just realizing that after years that it's not working at all, of course, because people need to discover their own roots and they discover their own paths. And it's like what I said about, the Bach flowers. If you're discovering everything for them and telling them, but this is how you have to do it, I wouldn't feel inclined to investigate or research that. I want to discover my own path. I want to discover my own truths and all the interesting, exciting things that sustainability has. Transition sustainability is very, very interesting, and I think it's only about sort of opening a door to people, tickling them, and then everybody just free to roam there themselves, and then you get the magic, because that's when, if everybody uses their own magic to find new alternatives, new ideas, it's not me or anyone else who can think up of all these ideas. It's all the different people, going on that path and inventing things and so on. So that's really exciting, an exciting thing to look forward to. I think the more people are starting to discover all these exciting alternatives, the more that's going to happen out there.
I think the freedom of dogma, whatever the current dogma is, I think allows people to discover their own way. Just like what we do in Druidry, is that because, there is no dogma within Druidry, and that we have, yes, Eva, being our own magic. That's from Diane. That it allows us to discover things and make discoveries and find our own truths. So if we have those and are able to test our own values, then we're less likely to lose them. But if something is being imposed on us from the so-called right, I don't mean the right as in the direction right, but the so-called right way, it's too challenging for us. We can slip. But what can I live with myself? I'm also about to join and have been, okay. No, that's another way around.
I think a lot of the dogma in ecologist circles comes from an immense feeling of pain. A lot of empaths who feel so much grief of what is happening. It's very difficult not to feel it and not to, or not to panic when you're working in sustainability, and all the texts, all the material that you're reading or that is coming at you, it's very, very disheartening. And it's just, I know it's, for me, looking at it, it's a feeling, that feeling again of powerlessness, and everybody deals with that in their own way. Some people get really angry and, go and demonstrate, do stuff like that. And other people are really trying to convince everybody around them and telling them off for why you're still taking a plane, why you're still eating meats and so on. And it's all, there's no right or wrong. It's just, it's all reactions to what is happening. So I can really understand these ways of dealing with that. It's just that if it happens to me, the moments that I fall into that kind of pattern of being really disappointed, I've been collecting a lot of rubbish in the park here during the Corona time, and always starting, like with my rucksack, and at the end of the day, I was just in such a bad mood every time again, and I made a project out of it, and then I felt this is not right. This is not going to help me forward when I'm focusing on what is going wrong, and all the anger that comes with it. It just brings you into a big cloud of darkness, and I know it's not the way out of it, but you have to experience it before you can believe it, because if you're confronted with it daily, it's very difficult not to believe that if you're not focusing and working on it, that it will go away. It won't go away. So you want to do something about it, and it's easy to get trapped in that, I think, in that feeling. So yeah, there's no judgment on how people deal with it, I think.
And I think it's being able to, you talk about, empaths, but I'm talking about, and they're, I say, who feel the pain for the planet, but even having a compassionate lens to look at people's reactions. So the angry people, the shouty people, whatever, they're coming from a place of anger, fear, and you understand that people react differently. And when you can do that, then you can come back into your own center. You can come back into that stillness. It's your own story, and you can come back to your own place and be grounded, and not getting hooked in by the reactions of others, so that you don't get lost and swung around. And I suppose, what would you like to have left behind? You're still only a young one. So what 3 things would you like to have left behind when
to have left behind when it's time to go?
It's time to,
Oh, Eimear, what a difficult question. there's many things I'd like to leave behind, I think.
Okay, it's only 3 you're allowed.
I know.
You'll have to come back another night to do the others.
I would love to leave behind the feeling of responsibility, the overwhelming feeling of responsibility, especially where it's not my responsibility. So thinking that you have to take responsibility in places where you don't have to take them, and then just being overwhelmed by all that responsibility. Yeah, that's one thing.
What I meant about leaving behind is your legacy, not so much.
Oh, I thought things that you want to, things that bother you. Oh no.
No, your
I
legacy.
have no idea. The legacy, no, I have no idea about that. I don't
How do you
I don't have
yourself?
an urge to leave a legacy behind, really. I would love to be remembered as somebody really at peace, having worked through all the issues, like the one that I said. For example, all the disharmonies, things that take you off your path, and just how lovely would that be that you're, my final years would be really a balanced person who is not fazed by the outside world and can just step outside, see the outside world, get lots of things happening, and then still feel, but all is well. I don't mind. I don't care. It doesn't touch me. Oh, that'd be brilliant. But a legacy, no, I don't have a.
I would love that. I suppose what I was thinking of, not all the books you're going to write, Eva, and fame behind you, but how you are now as a future ancestor, how you'd like to leave the world. If you think of the state it's in, or your world, the state it's in now, that going forward, what would you like to be able to contribute?
Do you mean the physical world, the way it looks now, the society, how it's?
How would you? Yes, we have ancestors, okay, but we are going to be ancestors. So, what kind of an ancestor do you want to be? Which is,
well, obviously an ancestor that has tried to change things, so to not comply with the way our society has organized things, and to not sit still.
So what would you do instead?
Well, what I am doing at the moment, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to work towards? Yeah. No. It's interesting because I often doubt what I'm doing, whether it's I'm too much out there, outside of my own bubble, and I'm trying to change things out there. And what's the use of that? Is that you're trying to manipulate something that is not yours to manipulate. So, and it costs me a lot of energy as well. So I often doubt that. So it's interesting that I say I want to be, I want to be able to say that I've done that, at least what I'm doing now. So maybe that's the right path anyway, then, yeah.
Here now, this is a lovely something from Ellie for you. Isn't that a lovely?
Very uncalm as well, Ellie.
I'll
show you.
Oh, that's beautiful. So that's how you're going to be as an ancestor. How do you honor the ancestors now?
I think through the landscape. I'm very, very interested in any tracks that have been left in the landscape from ancestors. I love history and and especially, that Neolithic time. That's something that really interests me at this point, having gone through so many eras at school and afterwards. Yeah. So it really fascinates me, the landscape and all the energy, the cracks in the landscapes and ley lines, all of that, geomancy, and something that really fascinates me.
Do you have that in Belgium? Do you have many Neolithic sites in Belgium?
Not many.
Yeah.
We do. Only it's so difficult to. I think for me, it's so difficult to hear the ancestors in this country because there's so many layers on top of it. So it's very easy to go to Scotland, for example, or Scandinavia, and the landscape is just so dominant, and there's not been so much intense civilization, layers of civilization,
Okay.
that leave lots of buildings and roads, and it's just, if you imagine that we've got in our countryside, we've got lots of very small chapels, and at crossroads, everywhere you go, there's chapels. And if you realize that a lot of these churches, chapels have been built on previously sacred sites to whatever society, whatever civilization, it brings it closer, but you also realize how much debris is on top of everything, how much disruption. It's like trying to receive radio, and there's constant,
Understand.
other distortion. So it's very difficult, but interesting as well. Difficult and interesting. It's not about it. I think sometimes this interest in Neolithic society is sort of trying to go back to the very oldest society possible that we still have remnants of, and it's also just a craving, I think, because it's also interesting to look at later. All these societies and civilizations have been interesting, and there's lessons to learn from them, and there's no one of them is better than the other. I think it's just easier to romanticize the oldest one because we know so little about it, and then you can project all your dreams of perfect, what do you call it, matriarchal societies.
Full of harmony and love. Absolutely.
Yeah, dancing amongst the flowers.
Finally, a non-anxious way. Thank you for being you, Eva. That's from Jeff.
Oh, that's really nice.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah.
Somebody says here, my hope is to leave the gift of joy to those who knew me. I hope this gift comes to their mind when they need a hug or a peaceful moment or a big old belly laugh. That's from Diane. Indeed.
Yeah, really nice.
What has been, I suppose, okay, what's been your greatest achievement?
I would think my family. But I know it's very done. Most people say they're children. For me, it's the whole of the family. I think, of course, having children, but especially raising them and trying to have a balanced nest for them. I don't know, trying to teach them lessons, but also learn your own lessons of letting go, and it's a sort of a slowly, I don't know what you call it in English, when you have, for example, when you have a dog on a leash and the leash can extend a little, it's a slowly giving more freedom. I think that, I think it's just because it's one of the most intense parts of your life. It takes up so much energy. There's also so much frustration, lots of love, obviously, but all the lessons, how they say that you learn your lessons in contact with other people, because they mirror things, and they bring up emotions, and then are you pushing those emotions towards them and being angry at them, or are you dealing with the emotions yourself? Why am I feeling that way? All that sort of stuff. But other people, you can still shut them out, but your family can't. So it's the most intense learning school for all these life lessons. And so that's so much together. It's learning yourself. It's watching the children grow up, and all the magic that comes with that. Individuation, how they become individuals and push themselves away from your truths, find their own truths. I think so. I think that's probably my answer for the biggest achievement.
Well
Hopefully.
done. And what's the most reckless thing you've done?
I think that would be, it's probably not one thing, but it's just following my path, making choices. Or is that not what you mean about
Well,
reckless
reckless
things?
means a risky thing to do.
Yeah, but it's the.
I
It's
mean,
just,
you may do something reckless that others might think you are absolutely crazy and wild, when in fact you took a big risk. But
well, but
it was,
that's exactly. So there's been points in my life where I've never been able to do something that goes against who I am, because I physically panic, something that takes over. So there's been points in my life where I had an option or was in front of the choice, or not really. I thought I needed to choose something, a path there, but then I felt really bad. I panicked and I realized I can't do that. So the only other option is the one that's really scary. For example, quitting a job without having another one, and deciding I worked for a chemical company in the beginning after I came out of university and was looking for a job. And so I worked there. I didn't feel very well there, but I needed money. And at a certain point, I realized this is just not it. I'm just living from weekend to weekend. It can't be really what life's about. So I didn't feel really well about it. And I realized I wanted to work in the cultural sector, but I had nothing on my CV. So I just stopped. I just quit my job and I started working as a volunteer. So that's no income. So that's sort of decisions. And for example, I'm a freelancer now, full-time freelance. I quit my job as well at a certain point, and I'm absolutely an entrepreneur. I don't have that blood in me. It's very scary. It was really, really scary, but I did it anyway because it felt like the only way forward. So that's often the sort of choices I feel. For me, it's reckless. For example, one of my main assignments, I let go of one of my main assignments because I didn't feel very well with that anymore, and I fell back to a really minimum wage for, I don't know, I'm still there 3 years or something, which some people would find really reckless, because I have no securities of job offers or income, but it feels really right. It's it makes me happy, but at times it was really scary. So I think these kind of things for me are the most reckless. I'm not really a very reckless person. I like control. So
well, for some people listening to you, would think you are absolutely out of your crazy mind to give up a solid job, blah blah blah, to do this. And yet that's what reckless is. It's around, for me, is about taking that risk to follow your heart, to follow your own way, your true essence, that working for those companies that weren't for you, and you're doing what feeds your soul right now, albeit you're not getting the same money. But it's about actually being true to yourself and living with the consequences, rather than not being true to yourself, but having maybe money. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having money. And
it's not so much the money. It's the thing. What I've done actually for the past 3 years is I created space, because I wanted to find out. I thought I was going to very quickly find out, this is who I am. This is what I want to do in life. And it just doesn't appear. So I thought I've got to clear the fields, winter time.
going a bit muffled.
Sorry. Can you still muffle?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. So I thought I had to clear the field, like winter time, prepare the field, and then just see what comes up. And I've been in that winter time for 3 years. So for me, I find it very interesting to see how long it can take before things reveal themselves, and how far you can go surrendering to that, and surrender to the not knowing. it can take a lot longer, probably because I don't think I'm made for one job or one kind of practice. There's many things that I like, but still, I think that's still the most scary thing that I'm doing at this point, which is why also I can't take a lot of other challenges at this point, because you need some balance somewhere, some anchor to feel a bit safe.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't think so. No.
That's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, no. There's obviously things that you could have done differently. I think everything you do in your life has a reason, has a sort of a purpose of learning lessons and hitting a wall and hitting it again. So no real regrets, I think. No.
So what are you grateful for?
Oh, so many things. The prayer that I say every day in my meditation is actually a prayer summing up gratitudes for lots of things. So I think I'm just grateful for life. I really enjoy life. I think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. Even I could easily say tomorrow, oh, why did I say that? When you're down and everything feels terrible, and I can think sometimes I can be such a fool. We say blowing high from the tower. So being really full of yourself, and then the day after you feel so small. But still, I think it's a gift. Life is a gift, and everything that you experience in it, it's really it's exciting. It's I love learning. I love having insights, gaining wisdom. That stuff. Swimming in rivers, swimming in the sea, climbing trees, all that. Really being outside in nature. Wonderful, yeah.
And cycling rather than walking.
Yeah, except when it's in some sort of hiking trails. It's terrible to do that with a bike.
Absolutely. A person in your life that you admire, somebody you know.
Oh God, those questions I always find those the hardest. I've actually, I don't know whether you saw this, but I've been the last 2-3 weeks, I've been posting on Facebook every day. I've posted, I've sort of as a Facebook post of friends, entrepreneurs, but also artists and so on. So I've written a short story about a person every day from my friends.
Okay.
What I love about them, and there's so many people I admire. I can't really pick out one. Truly sorry, it's probably not the answer you're looking for. But if you take the time to really connect to somebody, and it's easier when you don't have daily contact with people, when you're not, when you can abstract the person a little bit and really look at the core of the person. It's very interesting to see how many people you love, really, or how much everybody has something that is really fascinating, or a talent, or so that would be my answer.
Sorry. We've got to look to see who's on the list. But yes, I think it's interesting needing to step back, that some distance, so that you can actually reflect on that person and your relationship to them. I think it's a lovely gift to be able to write a story like that for people you care about. I think
it's also wonderful to do, really, because it brings about, if you say what are you grateful for, or what you love about your friends or something, it's just by doing that, it's the same thing about what I said about the stories. You actually lift it up and make it into sort of a shrine for the day, where you really appreciate and really see what is there. It's interesting exercises to do that in your life, I think.
Well, what a wonderful friend you are. Is there anything you change about your life?
Yeah, probably many things. At this point, I'm working too hard, so I'd love to find more time to do short walks, stuff like that. But ultimately, I would love to live in nature. I won't do that because it's so much more sustainable to live in a city, everything close by, and I have lived. I grew up quite rather isolated outside of the village, and I also know what it feels like to be really isolated and to feel alone and to not feel part of society. It took me a long time to feel I was actually taking part in society. So I think it's more about the balance than having one or the other. But at times the balance feels really, that the city feels very overwhelming, and I really miss being able to be outside in nature alone, and also not. There's not many parts here there's many parts where you're not allowed to go, and I have a tendency to go off the track and just have a look here and there, and often get chased away or get really angry. Owners or even caretakers of nature reserves who tell you off for going off road, which is I totally understand, but it's just an urge to be able to be in nature on your own. It's such a strong longing, and it's so difficult to fulfill that in Belgium.
Well, keep doing it. It's better. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. And I can imagine the frustration not being able to go through that gateway, across that fence, over that magical place that just calls you, rather than staying in the park with
very difficult
with the nice footpaths and things like that. And it's so I can understand your need to do it, and I think it can be frustrating when someone like you, I imagine someone who's so respectful of our environment, that you don't leave any footprints, and then you can't go in there because other people have gone, and like you say, people are leaving litter that you're picking up and that kind of thing. So that's one of the frustrating things, is that I'm no paragon, but I like not to cover. I like always to cover my tracks and not to leave anything behind with my footprints, and that I'm not allowed someplace because other people have damaged the environment before, and that can be really, really difficult.
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest pains that I feel, or I have felt the last months, especially during Corona, because it's difficult. I really like that so many people are going outside now. It's very difficult though to find a spot for yourself, or to be alone, really alone in nature without, and then I've had a few things, a few instances where I was walking, either known or consciously or not consciously, walking places where I wasn't allowed to walk, and it feels very unfree, really, in a time where you already feel a lot of, your freedom is tested. Yeah.
Very, very challenging. Okay, I know that. Okay, so who in history, or what inspirational character have you come across?
Elaborate. So what do you mean, an inspirational character that you've come across? Somebody that inspires?
A writer, a well-known person from history, not somebody in your immediate life, but someone who's inspired you.
It's in phases. So I'm really interested in Jung.
Yep.
Reading. I've been reading, page by page. So it takes forever. The Red Book. I read the memories, thoughts, and what else is called. I have it in Dutch. Yeah. I never read I always leave the last bit of the book. It's a really bad habit, but I'm very impatient. I read slowly because I go over every sentence again and again, and then but I'm so anxious to start reading the next book that I never finished the last book. So I haven't finished that book, but it was, for me, it was mind blowing.
Is there anything? This might be a hard question. Is there anything about your reading of Jung that stands out, calls to you, or resonates with you?
Well, in that that semi autobiography, it was
The Red Book? Yeah.
no the memories, thoughts, dreams, something like that. Aniela Jaffa. The first bit that he wrote himself about his childhood, that felt very recognizable. So in some ways, I could also see how extremely intelligent he was. I didn't really relate to that, but some of the things that he described of how he saw things, how he experienced things, how to him, for example, math was really very, very unlogical, where you had to use letters and it was actually math. So when you have algebra, it's the A and the B, and I thought, oh my God, yes, you're so right. So these kind of things. But then, I'm really fascinated by everything that he writes about the individuation and the going inside, and the sort of, well, the experiences he has, but also what he describes of meeting there. And it's just so full of, you can see so many metaphors and allegories and things that you can relate to. So it's often, even if I only read half a page, there's often something already in there that I think, yes, feels really right. So yeah, it's difficult to make it more concrete than that, but it's it was really mind-blowing for that time also, the time where he wrote, and the things that he the sort of the wisdom that he opened was very, very interesting. But yeah, there's other times, Hildegard von Bingen, I'm really fascinated by her. It just goes from one person to the other, I think, opening up. I was actually, I also read a book 2 years ago, I think. Somebody advised it, and I can't find it. I can't buy it. So I found it in a book, in the library, sorry, but it was really hidden in the archive, so I had to wait for it. And it was a book about Jesus, and it had a bright pink cover with Jesus on it. It's always, my books lying around here, it's always a laugh for everybody who sees the covers. But I started reading about Gnosis and early Christianity, and oh my God, there was a book there's a few books by a Dutch writer called Bram Moerland that I read when I was in south of France last year, and I was also blown away by that. It's not really historic, it's not about, or the writer is not a historical person, but just his description of what happened in all these phases of Christianity, who added what and who did why they did certain things, of gaining power, taking things out, putting things in, how it's really layers upon layers of distortion of a very simple,
message.
Yeah. So all that kind of uncovering I find really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Somebody from Stephanie, I think Eva's earlier isolation and then later education has brought her great wisdom and a refreshing ground of perspective. It's nice to hear her thoughts and opinions on the world and life itself.
Thank you.
Here, Stephanie. That's lovely. Tell us about the first time you fell in love.
Oh my God, Eimear. Why should I do that?
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, what do you want me to tell about that? It was just very, not very early. It was high school, first year.
Huh?
I often feel like the fool on the tarot.
Yeah.
Going like that, whistling, looking up, and then falling right into the abyss. And it happens every time again. So it's not that I learned my lessons. So it felt a bit like that. I was really convinced that he was, that he was also in love with me, and apparently he wasn't. So that was quite a setback. Kept me really, really on my toes for the years after, not really trusting very easily. But yeah, that was the first time in love. I think the second time was with my partner now, so it's
okay.
that was, yeah.
So you came out of the abyss and then
Slowly, very slowly.
ah. What concerns do you have now, about the modern world?
I think what occupies me now most is how to hold on to positivity and hopefulness, how to share that. Whereas in times where it's very easy, like I say, when you open your door and you step into the world, and the world can be very overwhelming, and you can lose contact with what you had what you had decided your intention was when you were still standing inside, thinking, today I'm doing this, or no, I'm staying with myself, I'm going to stay positive, and so on. You open the door and bam, something happens and everything's gone. So for me, I think that's what concerns me most, how difficult it is for everyone, including myself, to hold on to a positive look on life, and a trust, really, a trust that things can work out, that this society, the way it is misorganized now, that it's not final. It's not something that just happens to us and we have no control over. I do think we have control, and I think it starts from one person to, it's not something that I have to change outside everywhere. It starts with me and starts with everybody for themselves. But yeah, you have to. The fire has, the flame has to stay on, or something, or stay. I don't know what you say in English.
Yeah, the fire needs to keep burning, or the flame within. So, what gives you hope then, when you think of the world as it is today?
I think that's where spirituality comes in. So so many things I read about light and about energy, and the cosmic laws, as they say. Everything is in a perfect balance. So if there's light, if there's darkness, there is an equal amount of light, that sort of thing. So you see so much. Your eyes or your focus can be on all the darkness that you see around you, but there is an equal amount of light. So you have to find that, and make it shine brighter or something, or bring it out. So I think for me that all the readings and delving into the more irrational, or if I say spirituality, you could also call it everything irrational and not fixed in scientific knowledge. All these things keep me going, I think. And also just, there's still so much beauty to see, and so much both in nature as well as in people. And if you see that, I think it's impossible not to be, have hope, because it's obvious that it's there. Yeah.
This is from Owen, who I was in conversation with last week. What a delightful conversation. The flame has to stay. And, I think and yes, I agree that willingness to look for it and to see it. And I think as Druids, I think we have it with nature to be able to go and look for that flame and see it, and bring the light to places where it isn't. And also about living in the moment, that's the one thing we can control. You know, you say we can control things. We can't control the future. And Roman Johnson, you know, in some Teas with a Druid, you know, talked about we've lost our future, as in we can't plan next week, for example. You know, will we go on a holiday? We don't know. We can't book a flight, or sorry, you won't book a flight, train. We're not even clear, you know, how Christmas, what's it going to be like after Christmas? Are we going to go back into lockdown? Those kind of things. But that what we can do is right now, in this moment.
Well, it's, they often say we constantly live yesterday and tomorrow, and that's what really occupies our beings, and what gives us a lot of what takes a lot of headspace or energy, because we're either dealing with things from the past or we're worrying about the future, and every time we're not living in a now. So if you are really looking at the now, very often for many people it is perfect. If you just look at how is it now, how am I now, it is perfect. And if you can hold on to that, I think that's also what can give you hope. Well, hope is connected to future, but it's sort of, I think my hope comes from a stability or a sort of knowing inside. And I think one of the ways to fuel that is to try and be more in the now, and to feel how perfect the now is. Or if it's not perfect, to just allow for what happens at that point, but not judge it or connect any worries about worries to it about the future or the past.
I think it's this moment now that's the next step to the future. So it's about living right now. And I think maybe one of the gifts of this pandemic is that so much of us have been reminded about living in the now. I'm not suggesting it's easy, but you know, when things are chaotic, all you can do is focus on right now. It may not be the best now, but it's the only one. And if I can breathe and be aware of my breath right now and look for something I can be grateful for. And it's not about ignoring stuff, but if we can find some kind of joy or something to be grateful for within the pain and the sorrow and the grief, that keeps us going. Ellie has something to say here. I was just saying, this was from Ellie. Thank you so much for this conversation, Eva and Eimear. You've grounded so much energy tonight. Sadly, I have to go. We'll catch the last minutes later. Love to you both. And I don't know if you saw my conversation with Ellie some weeks back. A really interesting.
Not yet. No, I haven't been able to catch up with all of them yet.
Is this way past your bedtime, Eva? So,
well, it's not always past my bedtime, but I've been really tired the last weeks because I've been working too hard. So yeah. But I think I'm still doing quite okay. I haven't.
I haven't fallen asleep yet. Just, I suppose, a final question. What's your favorite season?
Oh, spring. Sorry, I can't help it. Spring. I'm absolutely. I'm a through and through romantic, and spring holds all the longing and all the, the promise of so many things. I'm really addicted to spring. I know it's very undruid, but I could prolong spring for quite a long time. I'd be very happy if that could be taken care of, please. But
I'll work on that.
At the same time, yeah, thank you, Eimear. At the same time, it's every summer, every season really has its blessing. So spring, I'm always looking forward to. Always happy with it. Then I really look up against summer. I think summer is, for me, it's too full on. It's too hot. It's too much light. I long for the time to be able to hide away, and to be able to hide away, you need a bit of darkness often, or a bit of quiet. And summer is so loud, so I often wrestle with it. But when it's there, it happens, and I'm happy in it. And then I can see autumn coming closer, and I think, no, I don't want to go into autumn. I want to stay in summer. And then autumn is there, and then it takes a while, but at a certain point you think, oh God, this is a nice season, so beautiful, and really, I can finally breathe again. I can feel, oh yes, I've got that time again. the evenings where you have a bit of darkness, you can walk in the darkness, or the mornings are not. So the light is a lot softer. It's low. It's lower, so longer shadows, and then you go, oh, no winter, no, please no winter, and then probably I'm not there yet, because winter in my house is quite. We live in a passive house which doesn't have any heating, so winter is quite cold in the house.
Okay.
So I'm never looking forward. I know it takes forever, winter, but I'm sure that once it's there, I appreciate it again. Yeah.
And it's getting cold tonight. I can feel it. I mean, cold for Ireland, and our summers aren't hot, so it's really Irish people whinge constantly. They always want to leave the country in summer to go and get a bit of sun. So, given that you like the spring, in terms of the ceremonies for the wheel in the year, are they both like, say, Imolke and the spring equinox, or do you find with the festivals that maybe there's a different season, or is it both in spring?
I really like Samhain.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very special time. I absolutely like Imolke because it holds all the promise and the promise of the coming spring. And then I'm not so much, the equinox. It's rather Beltane, which is beginning of summer, but it still has it has the end of spring, the lush where you feel everything rising up, and and it's right before it's sort of, you feel that everything is strained. I can see in nature that, it's as if, for me, it's my own projection, but I can see in summer that, nature says, oh my God, please, this is too much, too many flowers, it's too much. And it's so hot. It's not always so hot in Belgium, but I mean, with climate change, it's getting hotter. So I can just feel the flowers, weighing. It's just, it's the abundance is just a bit too much. So, and Beltane is just right before that, where you are blown away by how much, how every time everything is so abundant again. And it's right before that tipping point where you feel a bit, sorry for nature to have so much abundance. That's a silly thing to say.
Eva, it's been an absolute joy being in conversation with you. I've really, really enjoyed this.
It was really fun.
I'm going to say, and thank you, everybody. Don't go away, Eva. I'm just going to just thank you all for joining us this evening. And I really, really appreciate your comments, and keep them coming. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. And also, I just want to let you know that we will be having our first ever OBOD online winter solstice ceremony on Saturday, the 19th of December at 7 p.m. That's Universal something time. I only realized that Greenwich Mean Time was changed years and years and years ago. I've only discovered that recently. So it's in ordinary language, it's 7 p.m. UK time, and we will be live streaming it on all of these channels, so on the Facebook and YouTube channels. So just to remind you of that. And so thank you again for joining us, and see you next week. Bye for now. Slán go fóill agus ihuwa. Okay, let me do this.